I got your ass, huh? I know you probably skipped a couple seconds to see if the audio was working. I got your ass. That was so funny. Working good. Thank you for returning. And I have another exciting movie breakdown for you guys this week. And I'm really getting the hang of doing this a little bit more. I really want to learn how to do movie reactions. I feel like that would be pretty interesting, but I also gotta, still learn my way around here and there. So today I'm going to be reviewing No One Will Save You from 2023, and it is a silent film. And I know when we hear silent films, we think of like black and white, old school films where the text will show up on the screen, everything like that. But this is different. I feel like it's more of a modern silent film. And just a couple examples. So we've had quite a few modern silent films in the past years. Some examples will be probably like Azrael, Hush, A Quiet Place, and even some of The Substance too. These movies don't really have a lot of dialogue, and if they do, it's very minimal. But yeah, I really did enjoy this movie. I first saw it a couple years back when it first was released. It was released on Hulu, and I quite liked it. I wasn't expecting it to be a silent film. I was kind of thrown off in the first like 10 minutes. Anyways, let's get into No One Will Save You 2023. So the film opens up in the middle of absolute nowhere, and we meet a sweet enough girl, and her name is Brian. And it becomes clear, like as some of the film goes on, that she is alienated. She's kind of just completely isolated and shunned from the town. So Homegirl did something, and we don't know exactly what it is, but I can only assume it was bad. But yeah, why she is so isolated from the community, we're gonna get to that later. So Brian is a seamstress and she lives alone in her childhood home. Her mother passed away. We're not sure like exactly when or how, but she just lives by herself, and to kind of cope with this loneliness that she experiences every day, she recreates like a little town. So she will buy like birdhouses and she'll like, create a town from those little houses. So not only did she lose her mother, but she also lost a best friend of hers. So one morning she's on her way to town and she's a seamstress. So I'm assuming that she does online orders because we see like a sequence of her like, packing stuff up and like writing a little thank you note. And she goes to town, and on the way there, she waves to a guy and he just shuns her, just doesn't like, looks at her, glares, and like just turns back away. What did Homegirl do? Like she cheated on you with your brother or something? Like, so she drops off the orders and she visits her mother's grave. It's pretty sad because, like I said, she seems like a nice enough girl, but she clearly did something that really rubbed everyone the wrong way for them to just completely like ignore her existence. So after she leaves her mom's grave, she notices a cop and his wife taking like a stroll, and she ducks and hides from them. Girl, what did you do? Like, what the hell did you do? After that, she gets home and she has a package delivered. And as another part of her pastime, she's trying to learn how to dance. She cooks, she receives harassing calls, and she also writes letters to a girl named Maud Collins. And we learn that Maud was her best friend that passed away. Yeah, Brian is just heavily grieving these two people that she dearly cared about the most. And it's just sad. One evening in this big ass, dark ass house, all the lights just pop off and they all turn on because apparently whoever turned them on does not care about the light bill. So she starts to hear some loud banging and she goes downstairs to kind of investigate, and she notices her front door's open, and she is standing at the top of the stairs and she notices a figure kind of in the living room area move. As she's trying to walk back to her room, these floorboards are such snitches, dude. They creak, and she just quickly runs back to her room and she hides under her bed. So Bro speed runs to her room, and oh my god, let me tell you, if you saw the my previous video about like the fashion and everything, there is a pair of shoes that look just like this thing's feet. Those toes are grippers, dude. Come to find out, it is an alien. And it's basically kind of looks like, your typical like alien, like gray, skinny, like big head, big black eyes, But as we'll see later on in the movie, that they all kind of have their own different, unique features to them, which I like. They weren't all uniform. They all like were very, pretty different. But anyways, jumping ahead. Alien lets out a signal and then gets out of the window, and she's like, okay, like whatever happened, I'm all good. Never mind, it's on the roof. Rings up the damn electricity bill up once again, and it does manage to get back into the house after Brian shut the front door. So she hears it kind of creeping around in their house again. So she decides to hide in the kitchen. And there's like there's the fridge, and then there's like this little like cabinet area, and she hides in between like that little indent, like open space. Is it an indent? Anyways, and just like us all, that alien swooshes that front door open, and it actually, is kind of hiding Brian a little bit better because the door is covering that like little indent. So Brian like kicks the door, and the alien, kind of flies a little bit because it's like very skin and petite like me. I know. Same. No, I was not in that movie. I was not in that movie. Okay, just stop. I know it. As she runs to the front door, that door gets blown off its hinges, and she starts to get dragged towards the alien, like a kind of like a telekinetic force is pulling her towards it. And just as it's getting closer to her, she grabs a shard and she like yank! It's in the temple, and it kills it. And Miss Girl's so traumatized, she did not sleep that night. It's in the morning time, and she covers up the alien, and she's trying to figure out like what to do now. All the power is out. I better not be getting charged for that shit. But the water works fine. Brian cleans up, and okay, homegirl's trying her best, okay? Like, she's a little bit more smarter than me than I would be in any horror movie. As she's leaving, the front door, of course, is gone. So she gets a couch and she covers the front door entrance, kind of like as a barricade so nothing else will get in. I wouldn't even think of that, okay? So along the way, she sees another house that's been broken into, and she starts to see these circular marks all around her. And the same circular mark was in the very beginning when she was leaving her house. The first time she went to town, it was kind of like in her front yard, and she thought it was just dead grass, basically. As she goes into town, she goes to the police station and she bumps into the cop and his wife. And the cop's name is Collins, Sheriff, like Deputy Collins. And that's Maud's father. The mother eventually does spit in Brian's face as they leave. And as the other cops just seen what happened, Brian is too embarrassed to ask for help, so she ends up leaving the police station. So something happened between Brian and Maud, apparently, because that's a very strong reaction. Devastated, Brian decides to just get on a bus, and I'm not sure if she's trying to return home or if she's trying to like leave the town. But once she gets on the bus, she has like a hat and glasses on so no one notices her, and she's relieved. So Brian's on the bus, and we actually get like this cool overhead shot where we see a bunch of like the circular markings all over like in the grass. And it's a pretty cool shot. So as she tries to get up and walk to a different seat, the mailman grabs her and he pulls her close and he starts to do like a croaking sound to her, and she pushes him off and he starts to get really hostile and tries to go towards her. And another infected person on the bus who has this weird croaking sound gets hostile also and attacks other people on the bus. We see like it's kind of like it looks like a tarantula, and it's something in the neck that's causing like some type of mind control apparently, and it's also causing the croaking sound. So sometimes it will hide like deep within the throat, and then other times like it will be like more noticeable, like it'll kind of pop out and you see it under the skin. Like the mummy? Yeah, like that. So homegirl runs off the bus, okay? She's a runner, she's a track star. She's gonna run away when it gets hot. She ends up running up to Maud's grave, and she of course is emotional seeing this, and like I said, it's clear that something happened between them, but we don't know what yet. But we do see on the gravestone that Ma was only 12 when she passed away. So for years, Brian has been writing letters to her dead best friend, and it's clear that she has not gotten over what happened between them, and she's still very much grieving. She looks up and then the storm is starting to come more towards her direction and she doesn't really have anywhere else to go, so she decides to go home. So she's going home and she notices a group of people who are kind of staring up at the sky and their backs are kind of bent a little bit. They have like their arms stretched out and they're all releasing like this vibration sound from their throats. And of course you can see the alien popping out and we start to see like a big like shadowy thing in the sky like approach them. So I think they're like trying to call out to something. So Brian does eventually make it back home and she notices that the body of the alien is still there under the blanket. And she wastes no time. She knows she has to prepare herself for whatever's gonna happen. She tries her best to barricade the home. She puts like a blanket over the rest of the doors so you can't see what's happening inside. She lights candles. And one thing I always thought was smart in horror movies is when the character fills up bowl when the character fills up pans of water and leaves them on the stove. I think that is such a smart move. Homegirl is doing all she can. The aliens approach the house once again and they blow off the couch and the blanket from the front door and they take the body back to the ship basically. Aliens re-enter the house and Brian decides to hide in the basement. Well, there's one there already, and she is just, trying to keep quiet. She has a pair of scissors to protect herself with. Well, the alien ain't stupid, and he finds her. But honestly, the alien seems to be kind of fascinated by Brian. He's not really hostile towards her like the other one kind of was in the previous one. So Brian is able to just literally get out the basement, and she notices a smaller alien and like I said, they do change the anatomy a little bit with these aliens. So that I think is pretty cool and like interesting. It's not all just one dimension. But this little bitch is hostile. And she runs to the kitchen, she throws the boiling water at it, and it seems like nothing is gonna stop this dude. And the alien is still approaching her. And it's not really like super hostile at the moment. We don't really know what it's thinking, but she's backing up from it and it starts to do a signal with its arm. And it doesn't move or doesn't say anything, it just kind of stays in place. She hides in the bathroom, and eventually, the little alien does try to crash into the bathroom, and she's able to kind of like subdue it a little bit. And she gets outside, and these motherfuckers are everywhere, bro. Now this one is waiting behind like a on top of a roof and it is almost kind of spider like the legs and the arms are extremely long. It's like the longest appendages we've seen on these alien creatures. So as Homegirl's trying to get away, the mailman from earlier, he grabs her and he starts to drag her towards the direction of the ship. And this big alien oof is using his big arms, his long arms, to create like a signal to call the ship towards them. And you hear the bones cracking, dude. It's kind of like insane, but it's still pretty cool. So all these aliens, I guess, do this type of like signal with their arms to try to communicate to the ship to come pick him up, I think. So Brian manages to get away from the mailman, and the light does come down, and it breaks this man's back. And as Brian's trying to run away from the ship, the bigger, like, spider alien is, like, crawling and trying to, like, chase her. She tries to use her car as a way to trap the alien, and it does. And as the alien is, like, stuck in between, like, the windows and the doors, it's kind of caused, like, a leak in the car, so she's trying to light it on fire. And baby girl roasts that turkey, okay? She's able to defeat the alien literally effortlessly, no problem. She runs back into the house and she notices the alien from the basement is kind of just looking in this room and he's kind of observing pictures of Brian and Maud together and like, all the memories between them and everything. And he's not really hostile. He seems like quite interested about what's going on apparently with Brian. She tries to hit it from the back, the alien, but he slams her through the walls, barely lifting his fingers. All of that doesn't sound right. She tries to escape, and as she's trying to hide, she notices that all the furniture is pushed aside from the window, which is okay, that's kind of smart from the alien's part, okay, because she can't hide, it's just the exposed window. And she is then just caught in this light. She's like just completely stuck, and she's not able to move. And the light ends up kind of like making her go to the ceiling, stuck on the ceiling, and the alien from the room approaches, and it coughs up the little, like, it's, think of like a sea urchin, and its tentacles are just like, they can move, like they look slimy, they can move, and he like gurgles this up, and he releases it into Brian's mouth. And when it does this, Brian kind of goes into like this dream state almost. But she wakes up screaming, still aware of what happened. But she goes downstairs and the house is fine, nothing's broken. And then we see a woman come into the back of the house. And she's kind of blurry, but this is meant to represent Maud. And Brian, of course, is shook it, and she just kind of like slumps down a little bit. And we get our first piece of dialogue in the film. And after this, she shoves her hand down her throat and pulls out. She pulls it out, okay? And she's outside of her house, so I wonder if the alien like took her out. That way it's easier for the ship to like beam down and grab her. But she wakes up before so, and a light comes down and catches like the little like tentacle creature, and it starts to build a copy of Brian, and that little creature goes into that copy's mouth. So she runs away from it. She runs into the woods, and the copy does end up catching up to her. And it literally looks just like her spitting image, but it doesn't talk. And it stabs Brian like around the stomach area. And this is when Brian has a box cutter hidden in her pants, and that's what she uses to stab the alien into the throat, which ends up killing it. And as the copy is dying, Brian's holding her like in her arms, kind of just like comforting it in a way, which is kind of interesting that she would do. But I guess let's, try to show like, that Brian is like a very sympathetic and emotional character. So Brian is just walking. We don't even know where she's going. She's just holding her wound, looking so exhausted, just walking on the street. And she eventually gets beamed up into the ship. And the aliens are kind of just looking at her, and they're just kind of examining her a little. That's when they push Brian into some of her old memories, especially when she was a child. One of these memories is when she goes outside and she sees a bunch of police car lights everywhere. She sees Deputy Collins on the floor crying, and we start to kind of like piece together what happened between her and Maud. And then eventually we're shown exactly what happened between them. So the two girls are in the woods fighting about something, and they both are extremely upset. We don't know exactly what it is they're fighting about, but it's a emotionally packed scene. And we see Maud push Brian to the ground, which honestly I feel like it must have been something really intense for, two kids that age to kind of be physical with each other. As Brian's on the ground, she is just filled with anger, so she grabs a rock that is right next to her and swings it at Maud's head, which does kill her. You could see as an adult, she's still grieving about it. She feels so much guilt and remorse for it. She writes letters, to Maud for every day. So Brian relives this painful memory, and shortly after, we see that, like, basically right after this incident happened, she starts to write Maud letters as a young child, and older Maud's kind of sitting across from younger Maud. And this is kind of a moment of acceptance where she realizes what happened. There's no changing it, but she could at least, finally move on and heal from it. And maybe she needed to kind of go through this process, I guess, with, the aliens kind of reminding her what happened, and like, hey, you did it, you regret it, move on from it. So after Brian comes out of the spell a little bit, the aliens communicate with each other in their own language, and for some reason they release Brian, like she's unharmed, and they let her go. And I feel like that is probably the most talk about and divisive part of the film, is why they chose to let her go. We don't really know. And I feel like that's when my argument of ambiguity in horror films is totally fine. Maybe we're not supposed to know everything, And Maybe it's just like they probably saw more humanity in her rather than all the other townspeople, I guess. Maybe? I don't know. It's very ambiguous. We're not supposed to know why they did it, but they let her go unharmed. And time passes and Brian's home is like restored, it's fixed up, and she seems a lot more confident now. She's getting ready, and we see her like actually like vibrant, unlike before where it felt like she was trying to force herself to be confident and just find some pride in herself. It feels like she got that glow to her. As she's passing by more townspeople, she'll be more open, she'll wave to them, and they actually wave back to her and they smile, but then we see the little like aliens still stuck in their throat. So I don't know if these are copies or if these are like the real people who are just taken over by the parasite. But they're much more enduring to her. And I feel like that's all she really wanted, was to feel like she was a part of society. And because of this invasion, it gave her the opportunity to feel like she was. But Brian doesn't care. The whole town's been taken over by these aliens, but she could care less, honestly. One evening, there's like a town like get together, like event, kind of like a dance scene, and this is where Brian's able to show off the dance skills that she's been learning, and everything just seems like peace and harmony. Like you would never think that the just horrible invasion just happened. Maybe the aliens did her like a favor. Brian smiles to the camera, finally feeling free and accepted, and as the camera pans out, we see the skies just completely covered in flying saucers. And that's it. That's the film. This film ending kind of reminded me a little bit of Midsummer, which is, I will definitely be talking about that film down the road. Just give me a little bit. Where it's a happy ending for the main character, but everything else around it is pretty tragic. And I kind of like those type of like endings where it's happy, but it's not like it's not for you, but for me it is type of thing. So yeah, that's No One Will Save You 2023. It's on Hulu if you want to stream it. I would have liked to have seen this as a theatrical release. It's kind of unfortunate it wasn't, but hey, like I said in the beginning, I gave some examples like Hush, Asriel, Substance. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Have a good day, and remember to eat your veggies, please, because I don't know. I wish I had a cool outro to say, but I don't. All right, bye.